Well, Mrs. Wotrovich, the body has been removed from the premises, but to me the facts are as plain as day. At 9:15, Mr. Wotrovich began to play his piano, as was his nightly custom. The maid heard the music stop abruptly at approximately 9:30. Then when she went to give him his coffee around 9:45, she found his lifeless body covered in blood. My men found no evidence save this curious bit of eucalyptus wrapped by this signet ring. We know for a fact, due to the lack of extraneous entrances and a very helpful beggar outside your door, that no one entered the house since the arrival of the lady in orange last evening. Since you three were the only inhabitants of the house at the time of the murder, I am able to surmise that it was one of you three who brutally murdered Alexander Wotrovich. I will take your statements now. Mrs. Wotrovich.
I retired early. I was in bed by 9.
And you, miss?
What?
Your name, your profession, your relationship with the deceased, your whereabouts at 9:30?
Oh, my name is Sarah Simmis, and I am an actress.
Not Sarah Simmis, the famous actress from Boston?
The same.
Oh.
Don't be drawn in, detective. She's no more than a common tart. She was with half the men in the city before she got her lures into Alexei.
Is this true, Miss Simmis?
Certainly not. Mr. Wotrovich was a gentleman friend of mine. I stopped by last evening after my performance at the Orpheum. Mr. Wotrovich has some creative opinions on Shakespeare.
And you, miss? Same question.
My husband's ward, Rosie McDowell. She's mute, poor thing. Something to do with her father's gruesome murder. My husband brought her with him when he came from Australia.
Your husband lived in Australia?
Yes, he traveled there as a youth to make his fortune in the mines. He was a great friend of Mr. Robert McDowell, Rosie's father. He immigrated to America shortly after Robert's murder with a magnificent fortune.
Curious. Very curious indeed.
What does that have to do with anything, detective? It was obviously his jealous wife that killed poor Alexei.
It very well could be, Miss Simmis. The bitter, jealous wife seeking revenge on her husband's extramarital affairs. But it just as easily could have been the demanding lover angered by Wotrovich's refusal to leave his current spouse.
How could you say such a thing, Inspector?
Really, detective, you go too far.
Ladies, I am accusing no one, save the real murder, the mild-mannered Miss Rosie McDowell.
Rosie, but she's little more than a child. How could she possibly handle killing Alexei all by herself?
But she didn't act alone. Send him in, Burke.
That's the beggar from the doorway. What has he got to do with Rosie?
I'm not a beggar. I'm Bruce McDowell, Rosie's brother. Okay, mate?
How did you find us out?
Quite simple, Miss McDowell. The definitive clue came when Mrs. Wotrovich mentioned her husband's time in Australia and your nationality. You will recall, ladies, that the murderer left behind a calling card of eucalyptus wrapped by a signet ring. If you were as well acquainted with murder as I, you'd know that when a killer leaves behind such evidence, he is motivated by revenge. You will also note that eucalyptus is a plant indigenous to Australia, clearly linking Wotrovich's past to his current bloody state.
And the ring?
My father's. I wore it always.
I noticed on your finger a small discoloration in the skin, an indication of a habitual ring wearer.
But why, Rosie? Why would you kill him? My husband was so kind to take you in.
Yes, young McDowells, I know all but the motive. Why did you kill him?
Well, we'll tell you.
Back in the outback of Australia, our father and Watrich knew each other in the mines, when my father found a bloody big amount of gold.
He began to ship the gold to a bank in New York.
Watrich found our old man's money, and then brutally murdered him. He managed to nick the papers that would give him clear access to the money. But he didn't notice me and Rosie spying on him while he brutally murdered our father. I decided to go walkabout with the Abbots the next 10 years, but he took the lass, Rosie, back to New York.
We lived apart for all these years, and I waited for Bruce to leave the Aborigines and to trace the bank records. Finally, we are here, and we have avenged our father.
He deserved to die. We won't hang for him.
Oh!
Oi, Inspector! They got away!
Now we'll never have justice.
On the contrary, Mrs. Wotrovich, I believe that in this business, justice has truly been served.